is the Stargirl After Show with Sarah and Sean. Your post-show breakdown of DC Stargirl with Easter eggs, exclusive behind-the-scenes info, and cast and crew interviews.
This is our destiny. I finally know who I really am. I'm Stargirl.
This is the Stargirl After Show.
Hey, Star fam. Here it is. The finale of Stargirl. Sponsored, as always, by Stargirl.tv and DCTV.news, your best resources for news, media, and spoilers about Stargirl and all the other DC Comics properties that you could shake a stick at. So head on over. There's still plenty of stuff over there to see. I'm Sean.
And I'm Sarah.
And as I said, here we are. It's the finale. It's, you know, this is my first after show, and I haven't experienced this before, and I'm very sad right now.
It's awful. Yeah. I have 3 of them that are coming to an end. It's really sucks. And the shows are so good. I want to watch more of it, even if I wasn't doing a podcast.
On the upside, we have a really, really great episode to talk about, and we're not pulling any punches. We've got an excellent Geoff Johns interview coming up toward the end of the episode here, and it's very enlightening.
It is.
And emotional, and we're about to get emotional right now as we start talking about Frenemies Chapter 13, The Reckoning, written by Geoff Johns and directed by Walter Carlos Garcia.
Oh, I didn't catch who directed it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Walter, the stunt king.
Makes sense. All right. Well, Star Fam, I apologize in advance for how emotional I get recapping this episode, because I think this might be a perfect finale to a show. So,
yeah, I remember I didn't respond because, like, I try to save it all for this right now. But I remember that you messaged me and said, like, that might be the best finale of any show ever.
Oh, it's so good. So we start out 9 months ago and we see Sylvester's gravestone. And this already got me because clearly Pat is the one who decided what to write for his epitaph. And it says, beloved friend and brother. And I thought that was so sweet that Pat saw him as a brother. He put friend, and he knew better than to put son, because he knew that Sylvester didn't value that relationship.
And, Pat even mentioned to, air quotes, Sylvester earlier in the season, I buried you.
Mm-hmm.
So we know for a fact this is Pat's doing. And it is very sweet. It's a very sweet grave digging scene.
Yeah, as sweet as one can get. And then we learned, we already knew this, but Dragon King brought him back to life with a shot. Icicle reveals himself to be there.
Well, he revived him with a shot.
Yes.
But, the absorption of cosmic staff energy over years or decades is what allowed his body to heal to the point that he could be revived like that.
Mm-hmm. Which I love that Dr. McNider wasn't wrong when he said that that's how Sylvester came back to life. It was just that didn't cover the brain aspect of it.
Right.
All right. So Icicle's talking to him and saying that you're needed. America will listen to you. You're going to be my mouthpiece. And Sylvester's not having that. So Icicle's like, well, I know how strong-minded you are, so that's why we're going to get rid of that.
So yeah, think about this. We're in a world that doesn't have a Superman. So really, Starman is the closest thing to a Superman that we have in this world. I mean, he's even got the Americana going on and stuff.
Yeah.
So his plan sort of makes sense. Like, America will listen to Starman, and then Starman's going to be his mouthpiece, maybe even be president. Because if Superman ran for president, people would vote for him. Which happened in the 1991 crossover series event Armageddon 2001.
Okay. I haven't read that one.
Wave Rider, who was a character, not a ship, touched Superman, looked into his future 10 years, and it's the year 2001, the far future of 2001. He did it 4 times because Superman had 4 books at the time. But in one of those times, his buddy Pete Ross was running for president, and Clark had to jump in front of him to stop an assassin's bullet, and it was revealed to be Superman. And then he ended up running for president and became President Superman.
Did he actually go by President Superman?
No. That would have been some 1950s stuff.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite stories from the Armageddon 2001 crossovers, which I just loved all around. That's such a distraction from what we're talking about here, though, but it kind of reminds me of that.
So Dragon King starts up the
Bonesaw.
Starts that up, and
Cranial saw.
Yeah. Sylvester realizes how serious it is, and his worry is not about himself, but he's asking, where's Pat? Where's Stripesy? What did you do to him? And I love that because the contrast.
I so love that because we see this man as he's dying. He's basically telling Pat that, like, you're definitely not worthy of carrying on my legacy. And between that and the flashbacks to the Eclipso times, you know, we see Sylvester being a jerk quite a bit to Pat. But we realize that, like, his real feelings are more like when he brought the beer to Pat in the JSA garage.
Yeah.
After Eclipso. He really, really cares for Pat. Like, that is his family.
And I thought it was so great to show that when we all kind of feel slapped in the face, you know, because we know that wasn't Sylvester this whole season. Well, the whole series. But, you know, we're defensive of Pat. So it's like, oh, he's being mean to him. And so this was a nice reminder that, hey, Sylvester really does care. Don't pay attention to that other guy who just buried him alive and is leaving him now.
So then we move over to A, present day, B, the Whitmore Dugan house. And our young JSA is sort of piecing together that Sylvester, air quotes, Sylvester, has been manipulating them. And not for good reasons. If there are good reasons to manipulate someone.
I was going to say, I think there absolutely are sometimes, but maybe that doesn't make me sound that great.
As a mother, you would say that.
Speaking of mothers, I love how Barb is sticking up for Courtney, because Courtney's like, you know, he made me feel like I wasn't worthy. And she's saying, well, he's dead wrong. And that's just so great and such a leap from the first season where she wasn't as crazy about Stargirl.
But also you see her, like, start to process this. She's starting to think about it, which is going to lead into what she tells her later in the junkyard. Barbara, like, okay, so it's the finale. They knew it was probably going to end. So Geoff and the team clearly wanted to close everyone's loop. Bring them full circle, not full circle, but, you know, close their arc. Complete their journey as characters in a satisfying way. Obviously, they have a lot more journey to go that we don't get to see, but Barbara really, really comes into her own in this episode to that end. She saves her daughter later on. She is the one that gives Courtney the key to finding her inner confidence and saving the day. I mean, I'm loving Barbara in this episode.
Absolutely, I am too.
I mean, also every other episode, but, like, really in this episode, my God, Barbara, yes!
Yes.
Speaking of manipulations, we go right into some other manipulation.
Yeah. Over at the McKent house, Icicle is telling Cameron that Starman's on their side now, but Courtney and her friends aren't, so we need to convince them. Jordan also tells Cameron that he thinks that Ultrahumanite killed Pat. And Sophus has had enough and tells him, you know, quit lying to the boy. And Lily snaps and, you know, shut up. Our enemies will die tonight. I did not care for Lily in this episode, but I don't think I was meant to.
No, Lily's, she's not a very nice grandma.
No.
And, you know, it's messed up that Jordan's just come back from the dead. He's trying to rebuild his relationship with his son, and he's like straight lying to him and manipulating him here.
Yeah.
It's really not cool. Like, he's using Cameron to plant the lie about Pat having been killed by the Ultrahumanite.
Yeah. He is awful. But he does say to Sophus that Courtney and them will only die if they refuse to join us. So he's going to try to give Cameron his happiness, which I don't believe that either.
Yeah, but even that sort of rings like, oh, my son will have his bride.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very unsettling. It's off-putting.
Yeah. He is a terrible person and parent.
Maybe that's why he's the bad guy.
So he convinces Cameron to call Courtney, and she answers. And he says that Starman's at the junkyard. Family's coming, I gotta go. And that was it.
Yeah, so like he's sneaking. Like, oh, they don't want me to tell you this. Ha ha.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's revealed that that was a lie.
Yes.
So then we go over to Pat's grave. And we witness Pat dig himself out. And I want to highlight that Pat dug himself out because everybody taking a whole big lot of copium after 312 were looking for ways for Pat to get out of there. Someone's like, Pat's buried on top of Grundy, and then Grundy's going to wake up and get Pat out with him. Or like all these different ways that someone would rescue Pat. Like, you guys missed that it's Pat Dugan. That's Stripesy down there, and he rescued himself.
That's the best.
I just want to say that y'all failed Pat. You did not give him his due. I didn't see anyone guessing that Pat was going to get himself out of that grave.
There was someone on Twitter. They tweeted, "You can't spell stripe without RIP."
Yeah.
Which, had I not seen this episode, that would have gotten me. Like, oh, it was very clever. And fortunately, I could laugh about it.
Yeah, I retweeted it. That's all I have to say is, like, Pat dug himself out because he's a badass. What?
Absolutely. And he continues to be throughout this whole episode.
Yeah, he does.
But first we got Cindy, Mike, and Jakeem. I'm sorry. First we have the young all-stars.
There it is.
Climbing out. And they are at the tire factory.
First, though, I just want to say, I love Cindy jumping out of that hole.
Yeah.
Like, she just skipped the ladder altogether and was like, whew, bopped. And then, like, yanking them out. I love it.
Didn't she only pull Jakeem out?
Oh, yeah.
I think she only helped Jakeem because Mike doesn't want to catch whatever she has.
Yeah, that's fair. Oh, sorry. I don't want to be all contagious at you, Mike.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Courtney had her first big bad fight at the tire factory, right? That's where she defeated Brainwave?
No, the tire factory is where she got her ass handed to her by Brainwave and barely escaped.
Oh, okay.
Because that was the end of the first episode. The second episode where she put Brainwave in a coma was in the parking lot of Blue Valley High School.
Oh, that's right, because the sign was damaged.
Yes.
After that. Okay.
And thereafter. It's symmetry is what it is.
Yeah.
The first big bad fight happens there. And now the young all-stars face off against an even greater question mark threat in the same place.
Yeah. And then we go over and we have the core four there. We have Courtney, Rick, Beth, and Yolanda.
Suited up. No staff, but suited up.
For only like the second time this season, all of them suited up together.
Yeah, I got words about that too.
Okay.
But we'll get there.
Right.
But yeah, they're facing off against the entire McKent family and Starman. Air quotes Starman.
Yeah. Ultra Humanite Sylvester is saying that Pat's gone. And he's being very even keel about this. Like, oh, he refused to go with us. So he went to the woods alone so he could try to kill Ultra Humanite. And Ultra Humanite killed him. It's like, he should be a better actor than that.
Their plan here is to use Pat as like a Phil Coulson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a DC show, so maybe these people don't watch Marvel shows, some of our listeners. So just so you're aware, when I say Phil Coulson, I mean the death of Phil Coulson is what Fury used in the first Avengers movie to bring the Avengers together as a team.
Yes.
And Icicle was like, yeah, let's murder Pat, and then we'll use his murder as a force to bring everyone together. I really think he was just going to throw Dragon King under the bus and have everybody turn on him and murder him.
Yeah. Well, because Dragon King can't die, as far as we're aware.
Well, now Dragon King's in a different body.
Right.
See, Dragon King in his original body couldn't die because of all the stuff he had done to it.
Okay, so it just depends on what he's done the past 9 months in that gorilla body. Yeah.
Yeah. Or what,
Okay.
Maybe he souped up his body in the same way for the Ultra Humanite.
Yeah.
Who knows? But either way, I don't think Jordan cared if he lived or died.
No, I don't think so.
I think he just wanted to use Gorilla Dragon King. Gorilla King? Gorilla King. I think he wanted to use Gorilla King as a scapegoat and didn't care if he died in the process of gaining the trust of the others so that he could move on to the next stage of his plan of Sylvester being his mouthpiece.
I think you're right. So as Sylvester is saying all this stuff about Pat dying, Courtney is like, I don't believe you. You've been lying to us this whole time. And Cameron comes in and says, but I wouldn't lie to you, because he's just blindly trusting his father. And I think that's the moment that breaks him, that he realizes his father made him lie in order to get what he wanted.
Yeah.
And then he realized, I really did just betray Courtney.
I think it's funny that he says, I wouldn't lie to you. Literally 3 scenes after lying to her.
Yeah. Well, he didn't know. He said Starman was going to be there.
But
he didn't actually lie.
He did, though, because when he got off the phone with her, he turned around and said to his dad, I don't like lying to her.
Yeah, I don't see how that was a lie, though.
He was pretending that his family didn't want him to convey that information.
Okay.
That is a lie.
Okay.
It was a manipulation at the very least, which is
yes,
maybe
I would
worse.
give that. I would say yes.
So even though Courtney said, like, I don't believe you, she was clearly worried, because when Stripe landed, she wasn't like, oh my God, Pat. She was like, Pat?
Mm-hmm.
Question mark hanging in the air. And the look on her face when he says, yeah, it's me, but that's not Sylvester. That's the Ultra Humanite. She's like, oh, hell no.
And then all makes sense to her.
Yeah, just everything slots right into place.
Then Lily goes all crazy and says, now you freeze, you wicked children. And they get into their fight pose, which I'm like, what is that going to do if they shoot ice at you?
Punch the ice in the air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think they should have run and hid to get, better tactical approach and all that. But that's okay. This ended up working out for them. Meanwhile, the young All-Stars are trying to figure out how to get out of that. Mike's like, okay, let's wish to go to the Bahamas. And Gorilla King attacks Cindy.
Well, Cindy attacks him.
Yeah, and he's saying that you don't belong with them. You belong with me. You belong to me. And they start going at it.
That's just Cindy. What Cindy's doing here, she's attacking the patriarchy.
Yeah, take it down.
So things get real fast paced here. And I do have a lot of notes about specific things that happen throughout these fights. And we are jumping back and forth. I say we just tackle it as it happens.
I'm good with that.
Instead of trying to lump the different fights together.
So first we have Sylvester versus Stripe.
Man, I noted here, Ultra Humanite sure is good with Cosmo.
Yeah.
Because when he does that like spinny shield thing, and then he also does a spinny throw that cuts a car in half.
Mm-hmm.
I think that once you're bonded with the staff, it must just be a matter of like imagination.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Almost like a Green Lantern ring. It's like whatever you can imagine the staff can do, like just try it. It'll probably work.
Mm-hmm.
Because the staff is very, very powerful, as we learned in the finale of season 2.
Yeah.
It's the conduit of all light energy or something. And I just want to point out that, and I don't think we would ever have learned this, but I would really have loved just a standalone episode about the history of the staff and how it came to be.
Mm-hmm.
And how it came to be Sylvester's.
Yeah, I agree.
With those Ted Knight name drops throughout the seasons, I'm so interested in how he developed the staff, though it is probably similar to how he developed the original technology in the comics. So maybe just read those.
Yeah, that might work. So while Sylvester and Pat are fighting, Courtney is telling Cameron, he lied to you. And Icicle's like, nope, and starts freezing her insides.
Oh, yeah, I noticed that. He didn't shoot anything at her. He didn't touch her. But this is... So they've said a couple of times that now Icicle is more powerful than ever.
Uh-huh.
But we never see him fully ice up. I'm guessing here, but my guess is that that's a budget reason.
Oh, yeah.
It's expensive to animate him being icy the whole time.
That makes sense, yeah.
But in story, whether it's a budget consideration or not, I think given that he's had so much trouble maintaining a human form over the last year, that he's probably hesitant to go full ice.
Yeah, I think that absolutely makes sense.
But from whatever that distance was, 10, 15 feet, to just like clench his fist and have her insides go icy, that is, even without being iced up, a very good example of him being more powerful now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Much more terrifying.
And just like that cold steam coming out of her mouth, even knowing that obviously she doesn't die, you're like, oh no, what?
Yeah, and as Cameron runs to her, our man comes in and takes out Icicle, stopping that, and tells Cameron, don't be a tool. You're getting played by your dad, but I'm still going to kick your ass. I'm like, Rick, maybe leave that at the door.
Yeah, I mean, don't be a tool. You're being played by your dad. Like, give that a minute to sink in. Because maybe you can have an ally.
Mm-hmm. But he gets one of his little dizzy spell things and completely whiffs when he tries to hit him. And then he gets iced away.
Yeah, he falls prey to what's been going on with the hourglass. Whatever you want to call that. The addiction, the withdrawal, the overstimulation.
Yeah.
Basically, like, I mean, his body is turned up to 15 all the time. There's just no way you can maintain that.
No.
But my favorite part is Beth and Sophus starting to face off. And the goggles detect hesitation in him.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I don't want to fight you again. And he's like, neither do I. And so like they're going to team up to like try to convince the others to stop fighting.
Yeah, I love that.
I super love that. And then Lily shows her really true colors here. Lily is literally like, I'm going to murder you, my husband of, I'm going to guess 70 years.
Yeah.
150 years. And she's going to murder him because he won't murder a teenage girl.
The teenage girl that also saved his life.
Yeah.
A few days ago.
Excellent point.
But Yolanda is leaping overhead. Lily shoots some ice up there, misses Yolanda, but hits a car that falls and crushes her.
So she did get to murder somebody. It was just herself.
So she was in her human... I guess I don't know if she can ice up. So she was in her human form. So I'm assuming that's the end of her.
Yeah.
Because she didn't turn to water and melt and go.
It's the last episode, so I'm going to go with yes.
Perfect.
Also, this is just my headcanon. But to my mind, her and Sophus are different ice families that have come together.
Okay.
And doing that has made Jordan the most powerful of the ice people. That's why he was able to completely ice up and turn into living ice or whatever to survive his cataclysm.
That makes sense.
Again, just headcanon. There's no confirmation here, but that's the way I've always seen it.
All right, so Lily's gone, and Pat and Ultra Humanite Sylvester are fighting, and Sylvester is telling Pat that you ruined everything. You fought back. Now all of you need to die. Yells out, "I will never stop being Starman, ever." And you can just see how crazy that guy is.
Yeah, he's a little out of his gourd.
Did we ever see what Ultra Humanite looked like in his original form before he became the gorilla? Or I guess before he became the actress?
No. They said that he was a scientist. And in the comics, he was around before the gorilla form. Mm-hmm. You see the scientist version. Because that character goes all the way back to like 1940. He was Superman's first supervillain.
Okay.
Like, that's how far back this dude goes. He's basically the first supervillain. If you don't count Lex Luthor, which I don't count as a supervillain, I just count him as a bad guy.
Okay.
But no, not on the show. And Sylvester, air quotes, did say we don't even know if that was his original body. Now, that was the Ultra Humanite himself talking. So who knows what to read into that?
Yeah, I have no idea.
It's the Ultra Humanite pretending to be Sylvester, talking about the Ultra Humanite and saying, we don't even know if that was his original body. Haha, that'll throw him off the track.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Who can say?
Okay, I was just curious. All right, now over with the Young All-Stars. Mike and Jakeem are watching Cindy as she fights. Mike says, okay, make a wish. You need to be direct, be honest, be specific. And Jakeem makes a totally specific and direct wish. As he's watching as Gorilla King is pulling Cindy, like trying to pull her apart, he says, I wish the most beautiful woman in the world would never be bothered by her father again. Mike's like, who's to say she's the most beautiful girl? Jakeem just outbursts, I am, the guy with the pen.
I am. I said it. The kid with the pen. My God, that moment got to me so hard.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That is the intention that Zeke was talking about.
Yes.
If Zeke's grandma was there to see that, she'd have been like, oh, hell yeah.
She'd be so proud of him.
And we get the pink lightning eyes from the comics that he's so known for. And the Thunderbolt does his thing. He takes care of it.
Takes him up into the air and down falls a little stuffed gorilla.
And he manages to embarrass Jakeem in the process.
Of course. You're telling Cindy a gift from your not-so-secret admirer. It's Jakeem. Definitely Jakeem.
Over at the junkyard, God, what are we calling him? Ultra Sylvester?
Okay, that works.
Ultra Sylvester takes out Stripe, takes him down, blasts him open, peels Pat out like a thing that you get out of a can.
Sardine?
Yes, like a sardine. A single pack sardine.
And then Icicle is saying to pledge your loyalty now. And one of the best moments of the entire series, he gets an arrow to his neck because Barbara has learned how to use her crossbow. And she tells him to stay away from her daughter.
This is what I'm talking about. Barbara stepping it up. I think,
yes.
And again, just headcanon, but I think that when Paula died, Barbara got that crossbow and she was just in the backyard for hours and hours at a time.
Oh, I had a different thought. I thought because I mentioned earlier that she was off looking for Artemis to get Artemis to join the fight. And so I thought she went to that house and then took the crossbow. And it was just the adrenaline and knowing that she needed to save her daughter is how she got that shot.
I definitely feel like Paula told her, like, keep the crossbow, practice with it. And then when Paula died, Barbara probably wanted to honor Paula and accomplish what Barbara was trying to help her accomplish. And so I just see her practicing in every spare moment that she had, that she could.
Yeah.
Or, alternate thought, she was aiming at somebody 6 feet to the left of Icicle.
That could be too.
Yeah.
And Jordan's telling her, this could have been perfect. We could have brought back what we had. And she's like, we never had anything.
That line, like, seriously creeped me out.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's evil. He's a murderer. He's done a lot of terrible things. But there was something about that, like, creepy dude thinking that there was a mutual connection between them. It just skeeved me out, man.
Yeah, he's delusional.
And you know who else I think is skeeved out?
His son.
Cameron. Cameron's like, oh, yeah, nope, too far.
Yeah, and he blasts Jordan away from Courtney and Barbara.
As they're taking shelter behind a car, Barbara tells Courtney, like, the staff only works for Sylvester because you thought it should. Or the Ultra Humanite. I don't remember what she said. But Ultra Sylvester.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of dawning realization.
Yeah, Courtney goes over to where Ultra Sylvester and Pat are, in their fist fight there. Or it's not a fist fight yet. Over to where...
Yeah, I mean, Pat's on the ground getting ready to be melted.
And she says, the staff doesn't work for you.
And just shuts down.
Shuts down.
Look, this whole sequence right here with Courtney and Ultra Sylvester is everything. At the risk of repeating myself, because I know I said this in the interview with Geoff, but like I start pumping my fists up and down. I can't contain my excitement when this happens.
Yeah.
And it's like a building excitement as well. It's not just a moment. It just stacks moments so perfectly. Let's break it down. First, there's just Cosmo shutting down, and he's perplexed. So she just goes on the offensive. And as they're fighting, she'll grab it, and it lights up, and then they struggle over it. And she says, "You're not worthy." And the staff's like, "Whoa, guys, all right, in your own corners." And stays there, floating in the air. And she does that awesome backflip. Hi, Christina Basket. And then says, "But I am." And it comes over. And then that side shot, too, where she just, like, brings the staff next to her in this very Stargirl superhero pose. Mm-hmm. Just building. And then, like, that close-up of her face that is our episode image for this episode is that smile, almost grimace comes to her, and then amazing.
And Cosmo's all lighting up, so happy. And she tells him, "I missed you too." And then Ultra Sylvester gets up and is grunting like a gorilla. That was creepy, but I liked it. It was a nice touch.
Just like Dolores Winters when she killed King Standish.
And then this look here where Pat just nods to her like, "I got this." And Courtney doesn't fight him. She's like, okay, he's going to take out. This is his fight. Pat deserves to beat him.
Yeah, Geoff addressed that in the interview, which you guys will hear soon because we're only halfway through the episode. It feels like we're getting to the end, but we're not.
Nope.
This is an extra long episode, and y'all deserve it. And this episode deserves it.
It does.
You can tell I'm excited because I keep saying y'all, which I never did before moving to Atlanta.
Now it's just coming out.
Yeah. They just inject you with y'all here.
Yeah.
So I want to take a break here. I did write that down. The "I got this" look.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a good moment. Like, they're so in sync. They don't need words. They're a team now.
Yeah. They understand each other.
But I want to take a break at this moment to address a lot of criticisms that I've seen over the course of this season about not enough superhero stuff, not enough Stargirl stuff. I saw someone post something like, why do they still call the show Stargirl if she's never Stargirl? And it's because we needed to earn this.
Yeah.
When you take all of that away, we haven't seen her in costume since with the first episode of the season. No, it was later than that, but it was pretty early.
It was early.
Yeah. Definitely in the first half of the season was the last time she was suited up with the staff. I mean, we had 3 straight episodes with no staff at all. And to go through that and have her sort of falling away from Stargirl, losing her confidence in being Stargirl, feeling herself like she's second fiddle to Starman, and like that's his place. Like they worked so hard to earn all of this, to earn the staff going over to Ultra Starman, to earn him being able to take it from Courtney, and to earn Courtney needing to come back into being Stargirl, so that when you see her suited up with the staff and being fully Stargirl again in this episode, it's big.
It's huge.
If she'd just been flying around as Stargirl all season up until now, this scene wouldn't have meant anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have meant something, but it would have fallen really flat compared to what we got. And that's been my experience with reading people's thoughts about Stargirl, like kind of all along, is they've been underestimating our writers the whole time. And I will say, I saw a lot of people on Discord, on Reddit, saying that at the end of 312, they're like, I take it back. This explains everything that I've been having a problem with the season.
Yeah.
Now I get it. I think everyone's just used to like the shows that have the villain of the week and wrap everything up in one episode and don't have slow burns like that. And that's all I got to say.
Yeah, I think it worked really well here. I still think this was the best season of the show.
Yeah, I mean, this episode alone, my God. I've been asked a bunch of times what my favorite episode of the show is. And it's been hard to answer. It's not hard to answer anymore. It's this one.
Yeah.
This one delivers everything.
Oh, we get a call back to the first season here when Jordan is talking to Cameron and says, don't make me do what Brainwave did to his son. And then Courtney lands all aglow from the staff and says, the fact that you went there says everything. Which, does Cameron know?
Yeah, that was my question. Is like, does Cameron know what he's talking about?
Yeah.
But I'm sure she'll explain later and he'll be like, oh, what? Oh, damn. I'm glad I vaporized him.
And so, yeah, he's teaming up with Courtney and he blasts Jordan with a bunch of icicles and Jordan snowballs away. It's like a snow face that goes away.
Is he mummies out? Remember the original Mummy with the big sandstorm with the face? It was like in all the trailers. I think it was on the poster even.
Okay.
When I say the original Mummy, I mean the Brendan Fraser Mummy.
Oh, okay.
Not like all the way back to Boris Karloff.
Gotcha now.
But yeah, that's what it reminded me of, was like, it was ice particulates instead of sand, but like that face going.
Yeah, that was another new thing. Because we haven't seen them do that before, right?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I feel like I would remember that.
I think that was the same thing that happened to him when he got hit by the truck, but much more extreme. So I think what we were seeing was like he was burst into ice particulates, snow, basically. He was blasted into individual bits of snow, and that was just showing that his consciousness is still in there, even though he's little bits that are going to take at least 3 months to reform.
Yeah.
But before that, Courtney does blast half his face off.
Oh, yeah. And he did not like that.
Neither did she.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, yeah, the last time I did that, it was with someone that heals instantly.
Yeah. And meanwhile, takes a rock and hits Ultra Sylvester over the head. Should have gone for the head earlier. But he knocks him out.
Yes, that is a very low-key way to put that.
And he wins. Yeah.
And I mean, that was a good fight.
Oh, yeah.
Like, let's be fair. If you were to do a cage match between Luke Wilson and Joel McHale, I don't like Luke's chances.
No, probably not.
Because Joel is a giant man.
Yeah. And
he's also very muscular, as we saw in the opening scene of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But, Pat had something to fight for.
Yeah, you don't get in the way of Pat and his family.
All Ultra Humanite was fighting for was his own vanity.
Mm-hmm.
And, he rocked his world. I'm sorry about that.
Oh.
He hit him with a rock, you see.
Get it. Okay, I got it.
I also love in this next scene where Cam is leaving almost out of shame, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like, I turned on you. I turned on my dad. I don't know which I feel worse about, but like my grandpa needs me. My grandma's probably around here somewhere. I'll find her. It's fine.
Oh, no, he said my grandma's dead.
Oh, did he say that? Okay.
Yeah.
So he's got just his grandpa left, and he's going to like pick up the scraps of his life with just that.
And Courtney, being the wonderful person that she is, says, no, I can help you. But yeah, I think he's just too ashamed.
Because
he leaves.
That's Courtney.
Yeah.
Like, she wants to help him despite all he had done. Because, it occurs to me, so Courtney wasn't ever really on board with the idea of giving Jordan McKent a second chance.
Yeah.
And I think I've just figured out why. Courtney's superpower has always been that she can see the good in people.
There's no good.
There just wasn't any.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think she could see that too. But I love Courtney offering to help. Like, that's who Courtney is.
Yeah.
And that was perfect in that moment.
It really was. And then we go post-fight. We're in the basement.
We're 22 minutes into the episode at this point.
That's crazy.
20 minutes remaining. It's like the Tower of Barad-dûr has just fallen.
I was just going to make the same reference.
I remember actually watching Lord of the Rings Return of the King in the theater. And as the eye poofed out of existence and sent that shockwave over to Mount Doom, I saw 4 dudes just get up and leave. Like the movie was over. It was my third time seeing it already. And I was like, no, guys, no, you're missing a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where we are here. We have a lot of denouement to get through. And a lot of loose ends to wrap up. And I got to say, after 312, I saw a lot of people, especially on Twitter, saying like, there's so much that we need to wrap up. And I think they were responding to us saying like, it all gets wrapped up, guys. But they were like listing things and they're like, I don't see how they're going to do this without it feeling rushed. Sarah, did you ever feel rushed?
No.
Or like the episode was rushed?
Nope. Not at all.
It's because they took this 20 minutes and did it all. And they didn't do it all to death.
Yeah.
They gave us like the first steps toward resolution instead of like taking us all the way there for every single thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so well done.
Yeah. We start out with Courtney bringing Cosmo back to the crate. And she's like, if you want to, you can use the nice one. I know the Ultra Humanite built it, but... And Cosmo's like, nope, very enthusiastically spins around and goes right back into his old faithful crate.
Yeah. So I love that Pat actually explains how he got out of the grave.
Yeah.
And how it goes back to his first case with Sylvester as the Star-Spangled Kid, fighting Dr. Weird. And that's the Civic City newspaper that we see in the pilot for the show.
Yeah.
Of the Star-Spangled Kid and Stripesy defeat Dr. Weird. I so loved that callback.
I did too.
And I also love that it was, Sylvester, a 15-year-old boy, taught him how to dislocate his thumbs.
Yep.
so he could escape his bonds. I don't know how that kid was spending his days, but he figured that out.
But thank goodness he did.
Yeah. And so as Courtney put it, like, so Sylvester saved your life one more time.
Yeah, that was so sweet.
And I love that. I mean, really, really think about the scenario that Pat's in. He's just watched Sylvester bury him alive. So someone using the image of Sylvester has put his life in danger. So he thinks about Sylvester and remembers the lesson that the real Sylvester taught him and uses that to escape that. I mean,
yeah.
There's not a lot of superhero death trap escapes that I could say are poetry, but that's poetry right there.
Oh, that was so well done. Courtney apologizes. I'm sorry that it wasn't really your friend that came back. And you can tell like Pat is visibly upset about it. And then they have the reveal that both of them heard what Ultra Sylvester told the other last episode.
And that Pat heard what Courtney said in defending him.
Right. Yeah.
And God, that just kicked me in the chest.
Oh, it was great. And then we go over to Beth's house. Rick puts the hourglass down. So he has found a way to be without wearing it. And he apologizes to Beth and her parents. And he doesn't, say, oh, it was the hourglass. It's all that fault. He owns it and thanks them for being there for him. And then he's like, okay, Beth, your turn. And I'm like, what is going on here? And it seemed like it was going to be like her walking up there to be like, hey, mom and dad, we're dating. That was a vibe I got, but maybe that was just the hour night thoughts from the past.
Well, if you watch closely, as she's talking to her parents, you see his arm moving. He's rubbing her back.
Dropping in the little things now.
I mean, people have been talking about hour night crumbs for 3 seasons. They get their hour night cookie in this episode.
Yeah, I was going to say those were tiny crumbs earlier.
Yeah, but they got the cookie, the cake. I don't know what the crumbs go to, but they got it. They got the whole pastry.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll get there.
Yeah, what Beth does say is, she's telling her parents, basically, you've been my guy, all my life. Even when I didn't want you to be, you still were. And so she officially invites them to help her and to be a part of her team, just the Beth team. And they're like, would like sidekicks? And she's like, whoa, that sounds demeaning. And they're like, nope, we're doing it. Okay, let's talk costumes.
Yeah,
so
her
cute.
Dad jumps over the couch and the look on her face, she's like, oh, such a perfect moment.
Yes.
Speaking of Dr. Midnight, Dr. McNider is back. And he's revealing to us that the Ultra Humanite is gone. That dude is essentially brain dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because he got bashed in the head with a rock. Which is what I meant when I said that that's a low-key way to put it. Like that he knocked him out.
Yeah. Well, we didn't know at the time.
He basically knocked his brain out.
Yes. But the body is still perfectly fine. And so Courtney's like, well, what about Sylvester's brain? Is there any kind of chance there? And so Pat decides, even though Ultra Humanite said that they got rid of Sylvester's brain, just in case, he decides to keep him on life support to see what happens. And
then we go to some mountain base somewhere. Who knows where?
Yeah.
The Himalayas? Is it Nepal? Is it the Rocky Mountains? Who can say? But it's some mountain somewhere, and there's a Dragon King lab down in that mountain where Sylvester's brain is stuck in a loop of the last thing that he was concerned about before it got scooped out of his head, which is where's Pat?
Odd that they would hook the brain up to a speaker like that, but it worked for us.
Is it odd? Or was there a period where Ultra Sylvester was interrogating that brain?
Oh, okay.
For information that it could use to infiltrate Pat's life.
That would make a lot more sense.
That just occurred to me. And I'm stamping it. Headcanon.
I'll take that too.
That's going to be the argument I use on everyone on Twitter that says that it doesn't make sense for whatever reason. Because there's always someone, you know?
Yeah.
Fun fact, just today and yesterday, it was an overnight thing on Reddit. I tweeted about it earlier. Someone was arguing like real hardcore with me that the Jay Garrick on Stargirl is not the same Jay Garrick from The Flash. Like, he went all caps, like, no, they're different Jays. All caps.
Oh.
So I posted a screen cap from the script for 209. I'm going to read it to you now. Pat turns to see Jay Garrick, a.k.a. the post-crisis Earth 2 Flash from CW's The Flash, in a black suit, joining them. Jay is the heroic cornerstone of the Justice Society of America, the moral center that their best ideals come from.
Yeah, that sounds like pretty good proof.
So obviously, he admitted that he was wrong, and no, he just blocked me. Because that's the way the internet is, Sarah.
I'm aware, I'm on it.
We were excited about that internet thing at one point.
I still like parts of it.
Yeah, there are great people that reach out and say great things to us and aren't impossible to reason with. And I love the internet for those people.
Me too. All right, so now we go to the scene that wrecks me every time I watch it or even talk about it. So I apologize here.
It's a very strong scene.
We're at outside Richie's, and it's Pat, Barb, and Mike in the car. And Mike is going to go in to meet his birth mom,
Maggie.
And Mike asked him to wait there. And they watch Mike and, Barb and Pat sit there, and they don't like spy on them or anything, but they look over and see that they're meeting, and Pat and Barb are just holding hands in the car there. Very sweet.
And I love that there was no dialogue.
Yeah.
So I think that it was determined, like, there's nothing that we can say here.
Yeah.
That's going to capture this moment, as well as just seeing them talk. So while Mike is talking to his mom, Courtney is bringing Stephen Sharp's letter to his daughter Becky, as promised.
She's walking in the rain. I like that she's delivering it by foot, that she's not asking for a ride, that she's not taking the staff. Like, she's putting into work and making an actual effort to make sure that Becky has this letter.
Yeah.
We see her greet her at the door, and she just says, "I knew your dad." And then we cut back over to Mike. He's hugging his mom and then comes out to the car.
So this is what really got me. Pat asks him how it was, and he's like, yeah, it was good. Seems like she's got some stuff together. And Barbara can't look at him. Barbara considers herself Mike's mom. And she may have just helped take that away from herself.
Yep.
She's not even, like, the side of her face is to the camera, and we can still read all of this on it. This is Amy Smart turning in maybe the performance of her life without saying a word.
Yeah.
This is powerful stuff. And Mike knows it. And he says, thanks, Mom. And then floodgates. For Barbara, for me, for you.
For everyone, yeah.
Like, I am tearing up right now just talking about it.
Oh, yeah, no, I have tears streaming down my face. It is such a powerful scene. And this is not Mike being the cocky kid that we usually see. This is vulnerable Mike showing his true self.
Yeah, because, Mike's allowed some character development too.
Yeah.
And, also consider that he has been that cocky, sarcastic kid as a shield, because he's been living with this feeling of rejection his whole life.
Yeah.
And now he's been able to confront it. And so he can be more vulnerable because he just had that conversation with Maggie Shaw.
Yeah.
So, this is another thing that we talked about in the interview, but like it really hit me just how great Brec is. She says her goodbyes to Becky. Becky gives her a big hug as Brec walks away. The script says, but Courtney stops at the end of the path, her smile fading, lost in thought about her own father. But Brec doing that move up to the locket, and then that like discovery that it's not there. Because it was there her whole life, except for the past year.
Yeah.
And she literally expects it to be there, and then it's not. To bring that back to season 1 like that, and not scripted, like just for Brec to be like, she would reach for her locket if she's thinking about her dad.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about that simple gesture that broke my heart.
Oh, yeah. It's a tiny thing that speaks volumes.
But that's, that's why she's so great.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that I will one day be watching my friend receive an Oscar.
Oh, for sure.
I cannot wait to send Brec that text. Like, congrats, Brec. You did it. You earned it. For her Oscar. I'm saying it now.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree.
All right.
Oh, okay.
This next scene's less emotional for me.
Yeah. We got Rick in the woods talking to Grundy where Grundy's buried, saying how it's not fair. Everyone came back for a second chance but you. And he says, I miss you, pal. And we get the hand bursting up out of the ground. First or second season, Rick probably would have been like, are you serious? That's what it was. But now he seems just like genuinely happy that his friend is coming back.
Yeah. Rick smiles. There's a thing you don't see a lot.
Yeah.
Huge
growth.
Let's get more of that, please.
All right. And then happier times over at the Whitmore Dugan house. Buddy is chewing on the Gorilla King doll. And Cindy just like making a little comment, having fun, Daddy. So I love that this is a family dinner and Cindy is there.
Or is it Dragon Kong?
Oh, that could work too. Either one.
Gorilla King or Dragon Kong? I like Dragon Kong.
That sounds more fun.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Beth and her parents are there and talking with Rick. Her parents already have code names for themselves.
Nightlight and Hootie.
Yeah, and when Rick's like, Nightlight, what's your power? And he's like, gonna glow in the dark.
But glow in the dark, man.
So funny. And then Yolanda is seeing Beth reuniting with her parents and them getting along so well that she decides to go ahead and call her mom again and tells her that she did lie, but the truth helped her friends and family to come together. And so she hopes it helps us too.
And this is what I'm talking about, is there's so much to wrap up. They trust us, the viewers, to see these first steps toward the resolution without taking us all the way to the resolution.
Yes.
I mean, it would have been almost insulting if they took all the time to have Yolanda and her mom talking with Father Thomas or whatever.
Yeah.
And like having the whole thing where they hash it out and big hugs. Like, first, Yvette can carry the emotion for that whole conversation all by herself. And she does.
Yep.
Such a great job. And that's all we need.
And then we go over to Courtney walking in front of the McKent house. And all of a sudden it starts snowing. And she turns around and there's Cameron. And he asks her, do you really think you can help me?
But first, there's like, and again, a thing that you'll hear us talk about with Geoff is they really let this scene breathe.
Yes.
You take in Courtney's wonder at the snow.
Which I love because, her biggest villain is Icicle. She would think she would hate that, but the snow reminds her of Cameron. I guess the snow is softer than the ice. And so that represents Cameron better.
Yeah. And it also makes her the girl in the snow globe.
Yes.
But then like her and Cameron just look at each other for a few beats. And then he says, do you really think you can help me? And again, that's Cameron just asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
He's willing to be helped. And that is why he doesn't become a villain.
Yeah.
And, again, we don't need the whole path. It's the first step out your door.
We get their big hug and we know what both of them are thinking. And then we go to Copenhagen.
As you do.
And I wasn't quite sure what to expect here. I'm a little disappointed in myself. But Jordan is walking around and he hears some noises and a whisper of icicle. And so he walks toward it and is on all this sticky stuff. And cue Artemis telling him that he's on petroleum jelly laced with all this whatever her dad used to put in the hockey pucks that would explode. And this stuff even burns on water. She tells him this is for my parents and tosses a flare and says, you're not coming back this time, Mr. McKent.
Yeah, no, he's like so super dead.
Yeah.
I also like that she didn't take any chances. When you go back to that wide shot and you see the flame, it's like 30 feet long.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't know where he's going to be in this courtyard. Just as long as I get him in the courtyard, he's dead.
I also love just how polite she is all the time. She was raised to call everyone Mr. and Mrs. So even as she's murdering him, she's like, you're not coming back from this, Mr. McKent.
Yeah. And when she first addresses him, she says, Mr. McKent.
Yeah.
And I want to say the script specifically says, and Jordan dead for good.
Yay.
So
I feel bad about cheering for that, but yay.
Okay. So fun fact. I had lunch with Neil Jackson when he was in town for season 3. And he told me, I hadn't had this script yet or anything. He was like, no, Geoff told me I straight up die. But then I tend to get scripts before the cast. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, when I downloaded the script, it got corrupted or whatever. And I lost like several pages at the end.
Oh no.
So I texted him. I was like, dude, looks like you live. Last I see is like you're escaping from the junkyard. And he's like, what, really? And then I had to text him back when I realized that the episode didn't end. And I re-downloaded it. And I was like, I am so sorry. I did not mean to get your hopes up. No, you're dead as hell, dude. I'm so sorry.
My bad.
Because, they change their mind about stuff sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Not that it would have mattered in this case. Like, he's clearly not coming back on the show.
But I think this next scene is the perfect way they could have continued this or ended this. So we go 10 years from now, and the Shade is giving tours of a JSA museum, and they get to the meeting table. And I love everything about this. He talks about everyone that, would sit at this table, Star Woman, which I want to know, how old was she when she decided to switch from Stargirl to Star Woman?
Headcanon, when she graduates high school.
I like that. And we go through all of them. Wildcat, Jade and her brother Obsidian, Dragon Queen, Stripe 2.0, which I'm assuming is Mike.
Yes. Yes, that's a good assumption. It's not said explicitly, but I'm going to go with yes.
Jakeem Thunder. And then Icicle?
Cameron.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that I heard Icicle right, and it wasn't like Icicle Jr.
Yeah, he wasn't going to go by Junior.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
The silly names from the past, those are from the past.
Yeah.
He's not going to do that to himself. Also, he probably would like to reclaim the name Icicle and make it stand for something good and make it posthumously turn his father into what he wished his father had been.
Okay, I like that.
Make something good out of the name to live up to his vision of his father instead of his real father.
Yeah.
Because if he's Icicle Jr., then he's like, I'm just the son of a murderer.
Yep, I like that he dropped the junior. And we got Artemis.
I was a little surprised by Artemis.
Yeah.
Because we just watched her murder a dude, like, in real cold blood.
Yep.
But, maybe season 4 would have just been Artemis feeling guilty about murder the whole time.
Yeah, I'm glad that didn't happen. But she just needed to get some vengeance, and now she's good.
You know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and say she never felt guilty about it. Not a day in her life.
Nope, I don't think she did.
I wonder if she told the others.
Probably not.
I wonder if they're just waiting for Icicle to come back. Oh, okay. Can we dig into this for a minute?
Sure.
Because I feel like maybe she would tell Cameron, because it's better to tell a friend, I killed your father, than to let them go on thinking that they killed their father.
I think so, yeah.
And being that he kind of thinks that he killed his dad already anyway, he probably would be okay with forgiving. Yeah, that's fair.
I doubt they were like high-fiving or hugging over it, but...
My dad killed both your parents. You killed my dad. Yeah, let's call it a wash.
Yeah.
Though, interesting team dynamics there with that little pair.
For sure.
So where were we? Damage.
Yeah. Sand was mentioned in the...
Sand was in Infinity Inc. Part 2.
Infinity Inc. Yes.
Mentioned not in.
Right.
That's the one that Jade, and Obsidian went off to New York to find. It's Wesley Dodds' nephew, who has dreams about people in trouble.
Yeah. And then Damage. I am pretty sure I have the Damage hero click, but I don't know the character.
Damage is Al Pratt's son.
Okay.
He's also known as Atom Smasher.
Okay.
So he has 2 different names. But they went with Damage here instead of Atom Smasher. Again, in terms of legacy names, if your dad is the Atom and you call yourself Atom Smasher, that just screams daddy issues.
It does, yeah.
So I like Damage better for his name.
And then finally, Our Man and Dr. Midnight, whose upcoming nuptials Shade is going to be presiding over. That was super exciting.
I mean, #Our Night, everybody. We got it. We did it.
We did it.
Full on marriage. Y'all were complaining you weren't getting enough crumbs this season. How's that?
Oh, man.
No crumbs. A full 8-tier wedding cake.
I had to rewind it and be like, did I just hear that right? And then I had to I seriously listened to it like 4 times. Because I was like, okay, no, Our Night's official. Wait, no, the Shade is going to be the priest or minister or whoever.
So we have a 14-member JSA lineup here.
Including Solomon Grundy.
Yes, including Solomon Grundy. He mentioned him as a member of the JSA.
Yeah, we didn't mention him, so I would make sure I didn't miss someone else.
So Solomon Grundy, who comes along with Our Man and Dr. Midnight, which is a sitcom I want to see.
Yes, absolutely.
Like Three's Company, but one of them is a zombie and the other 2 are married.
It's perfect. They need to make it.
Just the spin-offs from this show that we could have if TV and Warner Brothers loved us more.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I mean, we went in the spin-off with the Crocs. Like this season alone, the spin-off with the Crocs, spin-off here, the sitcom with them. Zeke needs his own something.
Yeah.
I think podcast makes the most sense for him.
Oh my God. I would listen to a Zeke podcast all day long.
Yeah. Zeke Speaks. Something like that. Yeah.
Zeke Impediment. Something. I can do some puns. But let's also talk about some of the exploits that the Shade spoke of for the JSA.
Yeah, so the ones we know about are that they stopped the Injustice Society from brainwashing America.
Season 1.
Defeated Eclipso.
Season 2.
And shut down Ultra Humanite.
Season 3. But then they also found Sylvester's brain, apparently.
Yeah.
I notice he's not in the list of names. So apparently the real Sylvester doesn't argue about the staff. And just like, all right, cool. That's on you. You have that.
Yeah.
Thank you for getting my brain back in my body.
I imagine him being like the fun Uncle Sylvester that hangs out. Maybe doesn't live in their basement, but still is around the family a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I feel like he's got enough self-confidence that he doesn't... You remember back in 303, he had his whole thing about like, what do I want to do for a living? And surgeon, icky, blah. I don't think that's Sylvester.
No.
Also, Sylvester probably has a trust fund because he grew up really rich.
Probably.
So, I think actually coming back from the dead puts him in a place where he's happy just to be alive and set up a new life and doesn't need to be Starman.
I think you're right.
And they rescue the 7 Soldiers of Victory from the Nebula Man, which is something that was mentioned, I think, back in season 1 as having happened in the script, but didn't make the final cut.
Oh, okay.
But they still wanted to get that Nebula Man in there. So they brought it into now. So someone on Twitter asked where Janitor Justin was recently.
Uh-huh.
Like, is he going to come back in the last episode? And sadly, no. But my response was, he's out there looking for the 7 Soldiers of Victory and his horse. And imagine the great adventures he's having. Well, he finds them, apparently.
Ah.
And they're all in trouble with the Nebula Man, and the Justice Society saves them. I love it.
I do too.
I also want to point out the Golden Age Green Lantern oath was on the wall. And I shall shed my light over dark things, for dark things cannot stand the light of the Green Lantern.
That was great, yeah.
And before we get to the end, I do want to note, we did not get a resolution for one of our main characters, Dragon Queen.
Well, she's in the JSA.
Yeah, but what's she look like?
Oh, good call. Well, if she's going by Dragon Queen, doesn't sound that great.
She's going by Dragon Queen, but there's a big banner of her, and it is the beautiful face of Meg DeLacy and not an iguana.
Yes.
So I'm going to guess that she got it worked out.
Or maybe she can like turn it on and off.
Also, Jakeem figured that pen out, man.
Yeah, that's true. And he would have done that for her.
The one weird thing about this is there's a museum. He's talking about them in the present tense. Not like they're retired or anything. And yet, like, Jakeem's pen is on display.
Yeah.
Or are they, you know what it is? It's like the Doctor Who experience, RIP, in Cardiff that they had for years. Where it's like, all the cool Doctor Who stuff, but like it was all replicas.
Oh, okay.
For the most part.
It makes sense that they would do that, yeah.
Yeah. Like, Justin's sword was there.
Or did Jakeem not need the pen anymore?
What?
Because like he turned pink and it came out of him.
Nah,
he did the wish.
Still the pen thing.
It is? Okay.
I mean, you're going to make Thunderbolt homeless? Come on.
Well, he lives within Jakeem.
Gross.
It's just another possession.
It's like wet and sticky in there. I would much rather live in a pen.
Shade wraps it up and he says that they're the greatest heroes the world has ever seen, but they're not the last. And I really like that because it's just the continuation of the legacies. He's saying that nothing can defeat the JSA.
So, okay, over 3 seasons, we've had the JSA like operating in the shadows, basically.
Yeah.
They're not a public team, but clearly they're going to go public.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a museum with a child dressed as Stripesy, which is something that I want to make sure that we point out.
Oh, yeah.
And so the JSA being out there and public is obviously going to inspire more people, not just more JSA legacies, but a wider world of people, just like the JSA in the comics inspired all the heroes that came after. It's the same thing. Like they're inspiring other teams and other people to utilize their talents or abilities in that way. And they're starting a new golden age of superheroes. That's my take on it anyway. All right, you can I see you itching to talk about it. You can go.
So we get Mitch Leary. John Wesley Shipp comes back here as the Flash.
Did you have Jay Garrick on your bingo card?
I did not, but I'm so happy he came back.
Such a nice surprise, right?
It is, yeah. And he runs straight through, destroying the JSA meeting table, which Shade is not too happy about. And he tells him the JSA is needed, and according to Courtney Whitmore, that includes you. He says, our adventures are not over. In classic Shade, he just says, ugh, are they ever?
And then Stargirl. Never the end.
Oh, I love that.
So beautiful. Now, the initial version that I saw had the alternate ending because they were just going optimistic. So it had the alternate ending that would have set up season 4, but it was only a tiny bit different. Like this whole museum scene, this whole 10 years later, giving us this wrap up for everything, that was always going to be there, even if we got a season 4. So we were going to get our completed trilogy, our completed story. And then if we got a season 4, it was just going to go in a different sort of direction that I can't get into, obviously. But the screener that's on the post-production screeners page has that, and then Stargirl, and then the title of the next season, which I wish I could tell you guys. It would blow your mind. And then coming 2023. So then when I saw the new cut with Never the End, I was like, that's even better.
Yeah.
I'm really, really happy with what we got.
I hate that the show ended, but I am very happy that they got advanced warning that could be the case so that they could complete it and make something that they will be happy with and that fans are happy with.
And, you know, it was always envisioned, or it was pitched, I should say, as 3 seasons. And you'll hear more about that shortly. But these 3 seasons that we got were really fantastic. And they tell 3 stories, but they also tell 1 story.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, over the course of whatever 13 times 3 is, 39 hours, we got to know these characters. We got to love these characters. We got to have our hearts broken a couple of times. R.I.P. Krux. And we have like something that's just so complete, so whole, and so resonant across the trilogy of seasons.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we're still like referencing back to things that happened in the first season here in the finale of season 3 just kind of says everything you need to about how well thought out and planned out this was.
Yeah.
Nothing felt rushed. Nothing felt like it was a throwaway. It works. And I am so happy to have been not only a part of the show, but I'm so happy to have been able to do this podcast and to interact with all the fans over the last 3 years and to be here with you, Sarah, and get to know you. And all of this has just been amazing. And I have that sort of same weird feeling when you read a long book series all at once and then it's over and you're like, oh, I can't live in that world anymore. And now I have to adjust to reality almost, you know, that kind of feeling.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I'm real melancholy right now.
I am so grateful that you looked out for someone to be a co-host and I happened to reply to it. Yeah, I'm just so happy that Stargirl came into my life. Yeah, I don't want to say much more and get too emotional.
Yeah. Okay, so as much as I'm loving reminiscing about this show and this podcast. You guys, they really just want to hear from Geoff now. They don't care about us.
I don't blame you guys.
I mean, they do. I'm sure they love us. But at this point, we've been talking for, oh my God, almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, you guys want to know what Geoff has to say about the end of the show and the whole of the show and all kinds of other great stuff? Well, first you have to listen to some ads and then you'll find out. Haha.
Stargirl After Show.
I watch this as an adult as a podcast where we reminisce about movies from our childhood and we see if it still holds up, or we just say, I used to watch this crap. Check out the podcast to see what we say. Peace.
Stargirl After Show.
All right, guys. Last interview of the season, of the series. Of course, it's Geoff Johns. Geoff, thanks for joining us again.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for having me again.
Now, obviously, we have like a super ton to talk about since this is our last time talking about this show, which is really heartbreaking.
Yeah, well, it's the last time I guess we're talking about it right after the episode airs, but we can always do another one of these just for fun.
That's true, yes. But we haven't had you since the end of season 1.
Yeah.
So there's all of season 2 to talk about as well.
Oh my gosh.
We don't have a lot of time, but I got some broad strokes stuff to go over.
Okay, great.
Starting with, all 3 of our seasons have been their own theme, their own sort of tone. You had our coming of age story and then our horror story and then our mystery. My question is, what comes first, the story or the sort of like tone and theme of a season?
Well, first off, I want to say thanks to you for doing this podcast. It's been awesome to listen to. It's been a real center for the fan base. I really enjoy it. And to everybody that's watched the show, that's listening to this show, thank you for being such a supporter of the show, of Stargirl, of the cast and crew. It's really meant a lot to me and to us to have such a loyal and kind following. We really work hard to make this show special, and I think that reflects in who watches it and who it's connected with. So I wanted to say thanks to everybody for that. 3 seasons of the show is a dream to me, and I'm so happy we got to do it. And again, thanks, Sean. So
it's been my great pleasure to do this podcast and to work on Stargirl. It's highlight of my life, fun. Honestly.
Well, I knew right away when we met and you started talking about all like the hardcore JSA stuff. I was like, okay, this guy gets it. Yeah, it's been super fun. So on the question, what happens first, the theme or the story, they kind of come hand in hand, really. When I plot a story, it usually, it doesn't really start as a tiny piece. It usually just the whole thing kind of forms in general instantly. Like I'll think about it and then, it always kind of, because what the characters go through, what the plot is, it goes hand in hand. So if Courtney's in a situation like season 3 where the villains and the heroes have to learn to coexist and get along in the wake of teaming up to defeat Eclipso and her believing in second chances and the goodness in people. And well, if she's trying to bring everyone close together, there's got to be something that threatens to tear them apart right away, that threatens any build of trust. And, and that's always going to be a murder, right? A murder in a story where suddenly you don't know who did it. And so that happened all at once. It was like, okay, if Courtney's trying to build trust, how can I challenge that in the best way? And that's by, putting a murderer among us. And that was how this season formed. And then I would look at things that I liked in tone and in theme, but every season was specifically designed to feel slightly different because I didn't want to just repeat ourselves like, I didn't ever want to do villain of the week. I didn't ever want to do, this is the big bad of the season and we're just going to kind of go through the same motions we always do. I really wanted each season to feel individual. It's of the same world still, but the idea of being inspired by first season obviously is a coming of age story. classic coming of age story of a kid coming to a new town and trying to find their place in life. And the second one being, more of a horror film, a scary story about darkness and secrets. And then the third season was about trust and the mystery and making it, I remember watching Murder, She Wrote all the time with my grandmother. And I just love like the idea of a mystery. So we leaned into that. And that was really, I think that's what also made this show special, is that we weren't the same every season. Even though we weren't. But it kind of went hand in hand. It never started out like, oh, I'm going to do a murder mystery, and then I figured out the story. It was really, okay, all at once. It's what's Courtney going through, what she's struggling with, and how can I best challenge that even more?
Makes sense. I have to say, from a personal perspective, one thing that really resonates with me with Stargirl is its ideas around family, which are pretty wide, because it's not just about blood family. It's very much about found family. And as a person who's never been connected with his blood family very well, found family is where it's all about for me. So, for example, I don't even have a question. I'm just talking at this point. But for example, when watching the finale, when you see the palpable fear in Barbara after Mike comes back in from talking to his birth mother, and then he says, "Thanks, Mom." I had to stop. I couldn't watch the show for a minute. Like, I had to recover.
Yeah. What's funny is that moment. I mean, we talked a long time, Amy and Trey and I, about that moment. It was a really important moment. And Amy, I think, just crushed that. That heartbreak. I tear up even now thinking about it. Every time we watch that scene in editing and in the sound mix, on the stage, everybody teared up. You could watch that scene 10 times and it still hit everyone in the heart. That was a really important scene to do because, especially with this being the final episode, I wanted a lot of emotional connections, that strengthen between everybody. And you can see that happen in the last third of the episode. Every connection, like Mike and his dad, and Mike and Barbara, having those connections fully form and become as concrete as possible was really important for me, because I want everyone to know these characters are going to be okay, right? They're going to be okay. And they're going to be okay because they have people that love them and that they love. And that's always been about what the show is. It's all about family. Like you said, it's all about blood family and found family, which is the same. And I think those scenes, in particular, the one with Barbara and Pat and Mike, after Mike sees his mom, it's a really special scene, and it's a scene that you could say, well, what does it do for the plot? And it's not about the plot. It's about the emotion. It's about carrying through on the promise of what the show is about. And the show has always been about finding family, always. And so that moment was just one of, I tear up the whole back third. I tear up the whole time, even after I watched it again last night, just because I wanted to, and it still makes me tear up. That all those scenes, but that one in particular, Amy and Trey, they bring it in such a wonderful way. But I'm glad it affected you too.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that those scenes get us because they've been well earned. They're not set something up and then 3 scenes later pay it off. It's 3 seasons later pay it off, and it's beautiful to see.
Yeah, hi, Sarah.
Sarah has joined us, everyone.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
Yeah, it's this one in particular when Pat went to the Shadowlands this season and talks about Mike's mom and what that story was and how sad it was, and we saw her, in season 2. We had planned for that since season 2, planning that there would be some kind of reconciliation between Mike and his mother, his birth mother.
Speaking of that, I'm curious, was the decision for Sylvester to be the Ultra Humanite made as early as when he shows up in the finale of season 1?
Yes. I always knew that's what it was. I always knew that's why where I was building. I had, when I originally pitched the show, I had envisioned 3 seasons because it was on this DC streaming app that is no more. And I figured, well, hopefully we'll get 3 seasons, and a trilogy of seasons felt really good to tell the whole story. And when I was plotting it, I talked to Joel about it. Like, I mean, the moment he was coming back, I told Joel, here's the story. I pitched him the story, because when we brought him back for season 2, I had to tell him, this is what the plan is. You'll be in a few episodes in season 2. And then I'd really love you to be a part of the cast in season 3. And I was so grateful, because Joel was so wonderful to work with, so dedicated. He brought such a great energy to the crew and the cast every day. And he crushed it in this season. When you see him, because you look at Sylvester, and there's moments where you don't like him, and there's moments where you feel for him, and there's moments where you love him, and there's moments where you hate him. Throughout the season, you're kind of trying to figure out, like, how do I feel about Sylvester? Until we see the reveal of Ultra Humanite, and you understand that's why he's so erratic. He's kind of all over the place, but also that was all by design, because you wanted people were going to feel uneasy about Starman returning anyway. Like, it's kind of exciting, but also what's it mean for Courtney?
Yeah.
And what's it mean for the kids and Pat and everything else? And so there's a lot of comedy in it. There was a lot of heartbreak in it. And by moving your feelings about Sylvester so much and so often, I felt that would keep people off of the trail that he was going to be involved in the ultimate threat. He was going to be one of the ultimate threats. And that was something that we talked a lot about. I mean, I remember writing episode 301 and adding in the beat of Sylvester saying, I did lie to you. I did come back for the staff. And the moment he confesses that, and you're like, oh my gosh, but it feels like he's confessed what he's done wrong. Right. So you start to get off his trail a little bit. And that was one of the, thanks to Joel playing it, that was one of, I think it's always a danger doing these mysteries, because you want the answer as to who and why to be incredibly surprising, yet make sense at the same time. And I think episode 12, when I saw the reactions to episode 12, and when we were putting together 12, I'm like, I think this is going to work really, really well. And it seems to have worked really well. So I'm really happy about that.
I have to say, as 12 was airing, I just got on Twitter and followed the latest tweets for the hashtag DC Stargirl. And I just loved watching people's brains melt over that. It was the most fun. Almost more fun than watching the show was watching everyone's reactions in real time on Twitter.
Yeah, it's really fun to having a murder mystery. It's really fun to unpeel the layers of the onion the whole time, and we did it, slowly but surely through the season, and it really builds. Everything really builds to some great emotional payoffs in 13. But yeah, it was. Again, I love working on this show. This was the best. This was the best time I've ever had in my career, because of all the people I worked with, and because honestly, they left us alone. We got to do what we want. And it was, a character that clearly is very special to me, but it was so fun to do this, and it was great. Like, I really am proud of the season. I'm proud of the series. And having Joel from day one come on board and know what he was playing. There's a moment actually in season 2 where he's getting out to see Mike's mom, and he checks the mirror, the rearview mirror. And that's because he's checking to see if his scar is showing. Oh. He's just checking to make sure he's checking to make sure that he looks okay. Wow. And there's little moments we did throughout, but we planned that way back then when we were shooting it. I'm like, just check the mirror as to make sure that, I'm Starman. You're putting yourself in the role. So since you knew since the first season that Sylvester's return was going to be actually the Ultra Humanite, was that part of the decision making to make Sylvester, the real Sylvester, a little bit of a jerk, so that we sort of bought that might just be who he is as he was being a jerk as the Ultra Humanite? Not purposely, but I always felt like Pat's so humble, so Sylvester has to be a little bit arrogant, right? A little bit overconfident, a little cocky, and that was just the dynamic those two had. So that was really making sure that they played off one another. And Joel and Luke play off each other so well throughout the season. It's fun when they interrogate the Shade. It's super funny. I love that scene. When they have these really emotional moments when Pat has to calm Sylvester down. Those are great. Like, every scene with those two just crackled because of that dynamic that was built way on and early in season 1.
Yeah, I love the detail of the photo that Pat has of them together is signed to him as if it's an autograph.
Yeah, it's super funny. And that's just a subtle thing that Sylvester, he's got to have that in his character because it plays off Pat so well. Those two play off each other so well.
Regarding those two playing off each other, I was curious about the burial scene and how much of that dirt getting thrown in Luke's face was just Joel messing around.
Oh my! Well, it wasn't him messing around for sure. It was all real. Luke was such a trooper. He was so ready to do that scene, and he stayed in that grave like all night. It was cold and rainy, and having dirt thrown on him, and having to do all those lines and all that emotion, and yet he was so dedicated to that role in those scenes. He was psyching himself up to dig himself out of the grave. It was a massive undertaking for him. And again, that's why I love this show, is because everybody was so on board for everything. Everybody gave it their all. And I just think that scene in 12, that's one of my favorite scenes. The Luke, Sylvester burying Pat alive is one of my favorite scenes in the whole season because it's so creepy. There's so many strange twists and turns to that. And it also brings the entirety of season 3 together. Even back to season 1, I love when it's referencing like how we traveled around and learned about Pat, and then he showed up here and how he manipulated those kids, and Pat's still smart. So Pat tries to play into what he sees the weakness is that, the humanite can't get lost in the role. It's a great scene.
Yeah.
That's all real. It's all dirt. That's all. I mean, that's them full on into the scene.
Oh man, my brain just blanked on what I was just going to ask. Sarah, do you have anything while I try to regain my thoughts?
Well, I'm coming in at kind of a bad part because you were talking about the scene with Barbara and Mike. And I, of course, started tearing up again because I just rewatched it last night and sobbed for the second time. I love the family relationships and, the found family because I'm a stepmother of a teenage child. And so there's a scene in the first season where Courtney was just like, oh, the teammates, they just won't listen to me. And Pat's like, yeah, it's really frustrating when you know what's best. And, no one wants to listen. And she's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And you see it dawn. I think there's such a realism to the show with those relationships. It's not like some others. It's just like everybody's happy. Like they figured out how to be a family. And I think that was so well done with the show.
I think one of the things when I first wrote the comic book, I'm obviously a big fan of DC and the legacy and JSA, and the mantles have been passed down to people. But a relationship I never saw was a step parent and a step child in comics. I just never really saw one that was close, that was meaningful, that was the center of the story. And it felt like a real opportunity to show, tell a story about two families coming together. And then, the best, obviously, comic book and superhero stories are always metaphors for what we deal with in this world, in the real world. And then the superhero aspect of it just makes it exciting to watch and fun to watch and see. And the visuals are beautiful. And so the whole story, the whole thing about Stargirl is, is that coming together, is that found family, is that relationship, is saying like a stepfather can be as good or better than a biological father to somebody. And we see that in this show. And we see even with Mike and Barbara, it was really important that relationship developed, right? And you saw it develop, I think, nice and organically throughout. There's a great scene that Amy pushed forward. She was so, again, the cast was so into it. Amy, we had a long talk about Barbara, and there's a scene, it's like mid-season, where Sylvester's cleaning silverware after losing his cool downstairs. And Barbara comes in and talks what it is to be a parent and talks about how grateful she is to have Mike in her life and how if you make a mistake, try and teach them, try and show them, embrace that mistake and try and use it as a teachable moment. And it's such a great scene that again speaks to what being a parent is. And I just love that scene. I really love that scene. And that was all Amy. That was Amy really pushing to have Barbara come in there and have a perspective on all of this with Sylvester. And so that scene was, added to the script, and it's just a wonderful scene.
Yeah, I love that one. And then I have another question about the season overall, or I guess maybe the series. How did you decide who was going to be in on information? Because like when we talked with Eric Goins, he didn't know who murdered him at the time. So is there but then Joel knew from the beginning his arc.
There was a handful of people that knew about Ultra Humanite because they needed to for playing the character. Obviously, Joel did. Mm-hmm. Brec knew. I think Luke knew. But really, it was more of a need to know, because it didn't. It's not that I'm worried about secrets coming out or spoilers. I feel like if spoilers get online, there's a hardcore fan base that's going to see them, but most people don't, right? Mm-hmm. The majority of people don't. So, I like to keep things as a surprise. Like episode 12, I was very are we going to get through? Because there's scripts floating around everywhere. Are we going to get through this or not? But ultimately, I kept it as a need to know, only because I want the actors to be able to act as if Sylvester is Sylvester, right? Because they need to play off Sylvester. And if they know that he's really not Sylvester, they might approach it differently. So I tried to keep it, as in the moment as I could. So when we did the table read for episode 12, there were people freaking out, as we were doing it. I never forget, Angelica's mouth was wide open as we got to that part, and she could not believe it. She was just stunned. And I think by then some people had figured it out or known, or read the script ahead of time. But a lot of the times, that table read is the first time the cast is reading the script to check it out. But it was fun. But it wasn't so much about keeping secrets, but more about letting the actors live in the moment of the series and day by day.
Now, regarding Sylvester, or the Ultra Humanite as Sylvester, it all makes sense to me. But when interacting with fans on social media, there's one question that I have difficulty addressing, and I'm hoping you can help.
Sure.
He's really, really good with Cosmo.
Yes.
How did he work that out? What's the reasoning behind how Ultra Humanite is so good with Cosmo?
He's done so much work studying the JSA in the past, and you got to remember, he's faced Starman for decades. And then when he got the staff, and as we explained, the staff works for him because Courtney thinks it should, which I love. That Courtney's so connected to the staff, as she thinks it should work for somebody, it will. And there's that wonderful moment, my favorite moment in the whole season, where Courtney says the staff doesn't work for you, and it shuts down. Love that moment. That's her confidence coming back 100-fold. But Sylvester, he studied the staff, he studied what it did, and when it started to power up, he's incredibly capable. Ultra Humanite has been around for, nearly a century. So for him to be able to wield that staff and access its power, when Courtney opens it up to him, accessing the power is not difficult, and the studying he did and the fighting experience he's had over the decades, that all accumulates to a pretty well-trained Sylvester.
Makes sense. I do have to say, that moment where she takes the staff back, no matter how many times I watch it, I start doing this excited thing with my fists. It's just the most intensely earned and exciting moment. It does everything for me.
Yeah. And that, the other thing about the season 3 and wrapping up the series is, you really want these iconic emotional moments to coincide with the story and have them, at the moment she needs it the most, she gets it. She grabs her confidence back. And I love that in the aftermath of that, she says, "I missed you too," the staff.
Yeah.
And then there's that great look that Pat and Courtney give each other, as if, you got that, I'll get this, right? And it's just a nod. They're so in sync now, this duo, this partnership, is that Pat just nods to her, knowing, you're going to go back and take care of Icicle, I'm going to take care of this creep. I love that moment.
Yeah, I mean, this episode was so great. I typically have one page of notes. I just have basically a one-liner breakdown for each scene. So as Sarah and I were recording our episode, I can just glance and see what's going on. But there were so many things that I wanted to know. I had almost 3 pages of notes for this one for the first time ever.
That's great. Well, there's a lot that happens in this episode. A lot. There's one scene that was cut that I really, really wanted in the episode. I love the scene, but luckily it'll be on the Blu-ray as a deleted scene. It's a great little scene. And it's not necessary for the story. It doesn't wrap everything up, but it's a great little scene with Mike and Jakeem and Buddy, the dog. And I'm so glad we shot it because I'm like, it's probably going to be too much, but let's shoot it because I'm going to try and get it in. And, that's one of the downfalls or the limits of broadcast is that you have a time limit. And there's a really fun scene, but it'll be on the Blu-ray, thankfully. So people can check it out. There's so much though that does happen in this episode. All the epilogues, all the fighting, all the emotional arcs and the last couple scenes. I mean, I know we'll talk about all this stuff, I'm sure, but yeah, there's a lot that happens in this. I'm not surprised you have more notes than a normal episode. Yeah,
it was intense. And I also noticed that the season's central conflict is wrapped up halfway point through the episode. So then it's just wrapping up the series.
Yeah, we usually, in every season finale, we usually have a good 20 minute, half the episode is action, right? Half of it's action, like the end of a film, 20 minutes of action or whatever. We usually have a pretty big action piece. We had a massive fight with Eclipso, which I'm really proud of. Great fight with the ISA at the end of one. This had to be an epic fight, an emotional fight. And, we got into the fight pretty quick. It's set up and we start, and then we have this great battle. But yeah, I always need time for, some shows have a giant battle and then you have one scene after it to wrap it up. And that's not what this show is. There's a lot of story to tell. There's a lot of emotion that comes out of this. And it was important that all the payoffs get properly set. All these characters need to be launched into their future and in a good way. It's important. It was important for us to make sure that all the characters had their arcs not completely concluded, because it's never going to be, because they're going to live on, but to put them on a trajectory of a really good life, of success, of happiness, a reward for everything they've gone through these 3 seasons. They earned it, and they deserve it. And they've grown from all this stuff and sacrificed so much stuff. So yeah, we do tend to, season 1, 2, and 3, we tend to make sure that we have plenty of space at the end to live with our characters and really feel the effects of not only the episode, but the entire season and series on them.
It's like the antithesis of 80s cartoons, where they would finish the big fight. They'd have one little scene at the end. Someone cracks wise. Everybody laughs. Freeze frame.
Yeah, it's important. I didn't want to just have a scene where there's 20 people standing around and everything's good and there's no emotion to that. And again, these characters, they deserve to have their stories wrapped up in a great way and to have the payoffs really hit. It's important for all of them. That's why, there's the scene with Mike and his mom and Barbara and Pat, incredibly important scene. The scene with Courtney returning the letter to Becky, finally tracking her down and giving her what she'll never get, gives Becky this gift that your father loved you.
I loved the little moment of Courtney sort of reaching for her locket.
Oh, I love that. Heartbreaking. Just for that split second, you can see she clicks into that mode of, I love my dad, dad, and remembers that it's not there, right? Remembers just suddenly that whole thing, that one tiny moment, it was so brilliant that how Brec played it. She reaches for her locket. It's not that, just because she's caught up in the moment of reconciliation with her father, with a father, and she just reaches it instinctively. It's not there because it's a habit. And then you see her kind of take that in for a second and then regain her composure as she lifts that umbrella back up. And just know that she's always going to have that pain, but you know what? She's okay.
Now, was that Brec? Because I noticed the script didn't say anything about her reaching for the necklace, just that she was thinking about her dad.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe it was. I believe that in the moment we did that. I remember being there on location and watching that moment and making sure that we kept doing that, but I can't. I think probably it might have been Brec. Yeah, might have been her.
Okay, so now I've obviously talked to Brec about getting cast on the show.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I've talked to you about casting her from your perspective. Can you tell me about like finding Brec as this avatar for your sister?
Yeah, I mean Rich D'Elia, who cast the show, brilliant, cast Shazam, finds great actors. I just think he's just so good. And I hope I get to work with him forever. Rich, we just kept looking at, I wrote it for Luke, sent it to Luke, met Luke, and he was on board, it took a while, but when it happened, it was like magic. With Brec and finding Courtney, I wrote the scenes for the auditions, and we saw lots and lots and lots of auditions. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in my office over at Stargirl and looking at the reads of the day. And Brec came up, and I must have watched it at least 15 times in a row. I just watched it over and over and over again. I'm like, this is her. I cannot believe it. She is perfect. She is strong, funny, quick. She was everything that we needed for that. She was just brilliant. I was hit by her so quickly, and then we had her come in to read, and she was so delightful. I mean, she's one of my closest friends now. She is like family to me. But she was just perfect. And I was so nervous because she was so perfect. I'm like, we have to get her. We have to get Brec Bassinger. And luckily we did. Luckily it worked out, and luckily everything fell into place quickly. But I knew the moment I saw her tape that it was Courtney. And obviously I was going to be looking for all sorts of things that were, impossible to really find. And yet she embodied every one. And I have to say, and everyone on the show will say it, she is the best number one you could possibly have on a show. She is always prepared. She is always excited. The crew loves her. She treats everyone with respect. She's super fun to hang around with. She's hilarious. Again, it was the luckiest moment of the show, because the show had to have a star like Brec, and Brec did it. I'm so grateful that the stars aligned, no pun intended, for it to work out. But there's a lot of interesting things that once it did work out, the fact she was, I don't know, I probably said this before, but she was born the same month and year that the comic book came out.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that till much later. I'm like, well, that's, I do believe in destiny. I do believe in the universe kind of brings things to a point, takes you where you need to go. Things come together, you need to kind of grab the opportunity, and that was it. But yeah, I can't wait to keep working with her on something else.
Speaking about your close relationship with her, we heard her perspective of the Saturn Awards and how she missed getting her award. What was going through your head when you heard her name called?
Well, I just, because they were at our table, the list came up, and I'm like, oh my God, this is it. And I look over, and she's sitting right next to me a second ago, and I just look over, and she's not there, because I've been watching stage, and I'm like, where'd she go? And her and Yvette are both gone, and I assume they've gone to the bathroom, and I see her mom just panic. Her mom is just sheer panic. And they announce her, and I'm thinking, she's got to be back soon. And they announce her name. And for a split second, I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? And I tell her mom, well, maybe your mom should go up and get it. And go, do you want to go get it? And she shakes her head, no. And then she runs away. She gets up and runs to the bathroom to get Brec. And I'm like, there's no way, like, this is going to take too long. So I'm like, I'm going to stall as much as I can. So I get up and I go up there, and I had a lot of fun stalling. And luckily I stalled just long enough for her to get on stage somehow behind me. I didn't even know how she got on stage, but it was hilarious. And I loved and it's so Brec. It's so Brec. And she's so adorable and likable that she was so funny afterward. Everybody watched it. Like Luke was talking about how funny it was and endearing. Like when she's like, I was 10-1ing, like it was a really funny moment. It was I have to say, it was a great kind of capper to the series. That was such a fun night because Joel was hosting the awards. Yeah. I won a cool award. Brec won a cool award. The show's up for a lot of different things. It felt like a very Stargirl night. It was really fun.
Speaking of your award, I looked all over the internet for a clip of that and I can't find one. So if you have one, I'd love to see it.
I do have one. Yeah. I think someone sent it to me. Yeah.
Nice. Saturn Awards, not very good about putting their stuff online. Watch it live or lose it forever, I guess. So 3 seasons of Stargirl. I feel like you pretty much told most of the story that you want to tell here, but you also laid some mysteries, and I don't know how much of this that you want to reveal, but sure. Since we're not going to get to explore this further, and I have a feeling that we would have next season if we got one, but there's some timeline questions. Like, we know that Dr. McNider was born in 1914 and joined the JSA in 1941. And okay, I know all the years of all the decades ago. I don't know if I can say what those years are, but I haven't thus far. So how much can you tell us about the wonky timeline?
Well, I would just say this is that for me, it was important. I mean, James Robinson was also on staff who, if everyone, most people probably know, he's a huge comic book writer.
If they listen to this podcast, they know.
Yeah, he's amazing. Amazing at what he does. And it was vital he was in the writer's room with me because he and I have worked together for years and years, and we break story really quick, and it's always by emotion. He's so brilliant at it. But when we first talked about this, we really thought it was important. I think both of us thought it was important to stay as true to the lore as we could, even though we were having the JSA take place in a small town with high schoolers, which is not at all what the JSA is in the comics. I think we wanted to make sure that the spirit of it was as clear as possible. And a JSA that first existed in 1992 just did not feel right to us. It has to exist in the 40s. It has to come from that era. And there are plenty of storylines in the comics, whether it be the JSA being transported to Limbo to fight, Ragnarok for decades until coming out of it, or the Seven Soldiers of Victory being transported through time and lost and then recovered decades later. There are so many stories that explain why the JSA exists the way they exist now. And it was important for us to stay true to those. So, we do have a timeline worked out. We do have we could have gotten to the stories like that. I don't think necessarily Sean actually would have, because it's not that important to our stories today. I don't think we would have gotten into, had we continued, would have gotten into the minutia of how exactly, when and where they hopped around in time or time changed, because it just wasn't that important. For the details of it, people who know, they could dig into it and read the background in the comics. But for us, for the hardcore fans, we wanted them to know that we are as true to the lore as possible. And again, because it felt important. It feels like for me, the JSA needs to have that long history. Otherwise, it's not quite the JSA.
I know that when I watched episode 105, I was surprised at the McNider info. And I texted you and was like, did they just make this stuff up or was this intentional? And you were like, oh, that was intentional.
Every detail we have is intentional. Every single one. There's nothing in there, even inside the Midnight Goggles specifically too. Everything's intentional. But yeah, it was important for us to stay true to the timeline in the comics. And because quite frankly, we knew that we could, if we ever wanted to get into it, we could, because we had the comic books as the background telling the story. But after a lot of debate, I think all of us in the room, I remember talking about it when first season, it was like, this is why it can work. We don't want to delve into it too much because it's not important to the story today. But for the hardcore fans, we want this to feel like it is the JSA. If you read the comics, those adventures happened. that was important for us.
You know, honestly, I think that Stargirl reached a point of comic book television that I've been waiting decades for. And I've probably ranted about this on the podcast before, but I feel like there was a hesitance in television to embrace comics. You had No Flights, No Tights on Smallville. And then you had like the Arrowverse with their leather suits, like getting closer. And then you had the Flash just like go for it with Gorilla Grodd. And I think that opened the door for Stargirl to be really the first full-on superhero. This is a comic book show. We think people are ready to accept it kind of thing. And I love that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously when you have, I'm not going to shy away from being as comic book as possible. And I remember when we were working on The Flash and I was talking with Greg and we talked about Gorilla Grodd. It was like, it can work. Like, we know it can work. We wanted to plant the seed in that pilot we did, that Grodd license plate stuff and the explosion. Like, we wanted to plant the seed of it. And we had hoped that we would be able to pull it off somehow. And The Flash, to me, really, you know, I love Arrow, but The Flash was the one that broke ground on bringing the superhero back into the superhero television space. And it did, you know, that early season, that first season did pave the path for, I think, all these other shows to embrace it as much as possible. And with Stargirl's lighter tone, you know, it veers more towards Superman and Lois or The Flash in terms of the tone of it all. And by having these kids acknowledge some of these names and some of the superhero stuff, like being a little bit outdated, but it's from the old JSA, it helped too. So that we could do exactly what we wanted to and embrace everything about it. The fact that we're seeing Ultra Humanite run around, this big white albino gorilla, I mean, we're full on into the comic book space. But I don't feel like it's goofy. It still seems to play, I think we play it pretty grounded for what it is and emotional. And I think as long as the emotion's real and the stakes are high, so if the danger is real and the emotion is real, you can get away with this kind of stuff. It's when the emotion and the dangers is goofy or the emotion is not, is like, I often feel like sometimes you see shows where the emotion's talked about instead of seen and felt. Yeah. You know, they just talk about how the emotion feels. And I really think the audience needs to feel it with the characters in the moment rather than discuss it. And those scenes, like at the end of this episode, you feel it with Mike and Barbara. You feel it with Courtney and Becky. You feel it with Rick and Beth and Beth's parents. Like, you want to feel that emotion. You feel it with Pat and Courtney on the steps when they're talking about what happened, rather than saying exactly how they feel, just letting us experience that emotional moment with them and letting it breathe and letting it live and not crushing it together in a scene that's supposed to wrap up all the story stuff too.
Yeah, I was going to say that about letting the scenes breathe.
Yes, for sure. I mean, that's always been something we've done on Stargirl is in the writer's room, I'd always say, like, not every scene needs dialogue. Like, let's just live in the moment. Let's just be here. It's not about what they're saying. It's about what they're doing what they're feeling. And so a lot of times we'll have scenes with no dialogue. It was important to just live, just be with them, because that's how you're going to feel emotion. If you just are with them, if you let things breathe and you let the emotion land before you're running to the next plot point.
And you've got such great actors on this show. Letting the camera just linger on their feelings. Really, I mean, this show's a home run. I've never been prouder to be a part of anything in my life, Geoff.
Thanks. Me too. I really am super proud of it. Like, we have this trilogy of seasons that will exist forever. And I'm every day I'm grateful. Like, we knew going into season 3, there was a high probability this was our last season. Like, we all knew it. And, you know, writing to that and making sure that, you know, we enjoyed every second on the set, every day. You know, even back in season 1, there wasn't a day I ever took for granted because I knew how lucky we were. And then when it started to manifest into the group that we had working on the show, the crew and the cast, and the writers and the post team, like everybody from A to Z, like every single day was a joy and a gift. And I'm really, in many ways, grateful that we knew the writing was on the wall at the beginning of season 3. so that we could do season 3 the way we did. You know, I remember back in when season 1 ended and the DC universe had folded and we were hoping for a season 2 on CW. It took a long time for them to figure it out because there was so much complexities in the red tape of it all because of HBO Max and CW and DCU. It was going from streaming to broadcast. It was really tricky. And Peter Roth, God bless him, like fought for the show and got it up and running and really believed in it. And we got our second season. And I remember working on season 2 and going, we're ending on a cliffhanger full on. Like we got plans for season 3 and we're going to go for it. And we felt pretty good that we had a pretty good chance at it because the show had done well and got great reception. And when we got season 3, it was a real relief and again, a gift. And then we went on to season, when we worked on season 3 and the network was talking about being sold and all this, there were so many discussions going on, to know that most likely that would be our last and to write to that. I'm so glad we knew. I'm so glad that we just did that.
Well, I remember a little bit of nervousness during season 1 because in the middle of our shooting, Swamp Thing got shut down in the middle unceremoniously. They literally walked into the middle of their episode 11 production meeting and said, you don't need to have this meeting. You're not getting episode 11. And I remember you called a meeting and had to address that and said, like, we're doing this, guys. We're not in trouble.
Everyone's freaked out. I mean, Swamp Thing's a totally different scenario than what we were going through. But yeah, I know and also communication is the biggest thing. You don't want people freaking out that Swamp Thing shut down and they're like, we're next. And it was totally different case for us. So, having that meeting was important. But because of crew and cast, of course, you're going to be worried. Right. I was worried when I heard about it. Right. So I made calls right away and like, okay, we're good.
But it must have felt great to get season 3 before season 2 even aired.
Oh, it was great because we knew we had that cliffhanger and I was like 90% feeling like we'll get season 3 because the feedback to season 2 was so strong and it would, internally. But yeah, when we finally got that, I was just in relief. And it wasn't just that, but the fact that, again, I had always planned this story with Starman, this trilogy that would finish off with Courtney reclaiming that staff. And really the legacy was all her own. Everything else after that would have been gravy. But getting that season 3, I was like, we've done it. Luke and I was always talking about it. It's like the championship. Season 3 was like the ring. We just wanted to get to season 3. And it was 4 great years of doing those 3 seasons.
With this trilogy wrapped up, is there anything that you felt was left on the table that you really wanted to address and didn't get the chance to yet?
I mean, honestly, the big thing was the scene that I mentioned between Mike, Jakeem and Buddy, only because it's a really funny scene and it wraps up one dangling thing from season 2 that I thought was important to address. It was super funny. But that scene will be on the Blu-ray and I was so happy that we could do that. That was really fun. I mean, other than that, there's other stories we could have told. There were fun stories we had in mind. There was some cool ideas, but I'm so happy with the finale of season 3 and the series itself. And I feel the payoffs are so strong in that. And the last scene in particular kind of helps. There's some things in there that we're describing what we would have done when the shade goes on about what the JSA has accomplished. But ultimately, I feel so creatively satisfied, creatively and personally, the relationships I've made with everybody and the fact that we just, we accomplished this body of work and we're all so proud of it. I'd rather end on a high note, do 3 seasons that feel like we set out to do something and we did it and everyone worked hard to make it as great as we could make it. And we're all super, super proud of it. I'd rather be really, really proud of these 3 seasons than to do the show too long. I remember people were like, well, what about when they get to college? And I'm like, this show is not going that far. I never want to do a season where, hey, it's our first year in college. That's not what our show's about. It was always going to end with them in high school. I would never do it beyond that because it just wouldn't have been the show. And it would have changed too much where it was unrecognizable. One of the things that was super important to me was to maintain the core cast. I always said the core seven where Courtney was kind of the fulcrum in the middle. And then it was Pat, Barbara, and Mike for the family. And then the found family, Yolanda, Beth, and Rick. Like those seven, the show would never work if we started to lose those people. The show had to have those people, always. And then there's all the other characters kind of stayed on. Like Jakeem joined us, Cindy stayed around, like Artemis. It just was it was perfect. You know, I didn't want to see like a season where suddenly it was Courtney and 4 brand new kids and, you know, Mike's off to college and Pat and Barbara have gone away for the summer. Like I didn't ever want to stray from the core cast because
you didn't want Scrubs season 9.
I didn't see season 9, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, I just didn't want to change the cast out because the cast is perfect. And it was about these characters. The moment you start to do that, and it just doesn't feel like the same show anymore. I wanted the show to be recognizable throughout. And so, again, like I'm really grateful for these 3 seasons because.
Well, see, now you've got me wanting to assign one of the colors of the emotional spectrum to each of these core 7.
You could probably, if you went through it, I'm sure. Okay,
so we're running out of time with you. I do want to address, we didn't talk about it really on this podcast too much, but it's out there now. Everyone's talking about how there were 2 endings filmed. And I think that people would be surprised to learn how little difference there is between the 2 endings.
Yeah, I'll just say this. The difference between the 2 endings is a handful of lines. That's all it is. And I knew the likelihood was that we were done, right? And the truth is, if we'd done a season 4 at that moment, I was like, well, if we get season 4, that would be our last, because I didn't want to keep telling stories once the characters were fully realized and their arcs were complete. I felt like the 3 seasons really finished those arcs off in a great way. And I didn't want to go backwards. Like once Courtney and Cameron are together, I don't want to break them up. I didn't want to, once Rick gets a handle on the hourglass and he's reconciled with Beth and his family, I didn't want to break that. I didn't want to break Beth and her parents up again. I didn't want to go backwards. And so I did leave the door open just in case we had a season 4, and there was just a couple different lines. And I don't know if the alt ending will be on the Blu-ray. I'm not sure if we're going to put it on there yet. But it is, because you've seen it, Sean, it is very minor, but I did want to write some dialogue and have a kind of a launch pad just in case something happened. But again, it's not a huge shift. I don't think it's monumental in what it does. It doesn't change that final episode in any way, really.
Right. So now that you've accomplished Stargirl, you are not done with the JSA. You have a new JSA series just coming out, a new Stargirl series just coming out in the comics.
Yep.
And they're really great so far.
Thanks.
I'm enjoying them. But also in the TV world, you have Geiger in development. Is there anything else that you want people to look out for on your horizons?
Nothing I can talk about at the moment. I'm really happy that the Stargirl series is coming out. Todd and I've been working on that for a little bit. And it's fun to write the JSA in the comics because it's a slightly different JSA. I'll do that for a bit. It's really great to work on those characters. And then Geiger, yeah, it's fun. I want to do something that matters and that's personal to me. So Stargirl was so important and personal to me. And I gave it everything I had. Lived in Atlanta half the year to be there. All I thought about when I was there was Stargirl and these characters. And whatever show I run next, whatever I do next, I want it to be the same. And so having the opportunity to develop Geiger, hopefully it turns into something. But I'm in the middle of that right now, and it's a lot of fun. It's completely different than this, but it still has heart, still has, I think, really compelling characters, and it's just a very different beast than Stargirl, but it's still a very personal story. And I'm excited to be working on it. And then whatever I do, I will bring as much of the Stargirl team to it as I possibly can, because they are the best people in the world.
Well, we're very much looking forward to everything that comes from you next. You're the busiest person I've ever met in my life. So I'm sure it's a list that's going to keep us entertained for quite some time.
Well, again, I want to thank everybody. Thank you guys for doing this podcast, and thank all the fans again for making the show work, for watching the show and spreading the word and talking about what you connected with, because that's what made the show go for as long as it did. I'm, again, really proud of it, really proud of this fan community that's built around it, and really grateful for all the experiences that I had making it. So thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us, Geoff. And we will
thank you.
See you again at some point, I'm sure.
Stargirl After Show.
I feel like that interview with Geoff was much better than the first interview with Geoff.
We had so much to talk about, and I got to actually be there for this one. So that was exciting.
I could have talked to Geoff for another 3 hours.
At least, yeah. Such a nice guy.
I could have asked him a million questions and gotten 100,000 answers.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to answer everything. He's got to keep some secrets.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we learned a lot, too. And I legitimately cried when he was talking about casting Brec.
It seems so meant to be. Yeah. I'm so glad for him that he got the show made. It's so important to him. Yeah, I love it.
So at this point, Sarah and I do plan on doing a wrap-up farewell show. We want to make it really, really special for you guys. I don't know if it's going to be next week.
No, we might need a little bit of time because we want to check on some schedules and stuff to see what can be worked out.
Yeah, so stay subscribed. It means I have to stay on Twitter a little longer. But we want to make it really special. We want to make it really special for you guys. And we're working on that. And it's going to be very emotional. So when you see that drop in your podcast feed, definitely keep tissues handy.
Yep.
Before you listen. So other than that, I think we should let people know where else we are on the internet.
Yeah, if you go to fandomlim.com, you can find all sorts of podcasts there, including my two other podcasts, The Swift Review, which so far covers the TV show Tom Swift, but we're working on more stuff with that. And What's New Nancy Drew, where we just had a in-between seasons Would You Rather game. And soon we have a Nancy book review coming out. So definitely go check that out. You can also listen to Sean's two other podcasts, Table Reads and...
Spelled just how it sounds. You can find it. And Table Reads will hopefully be coming back soon because now I will not have Stargirl After Show to fill my spare time.
Good and bad.
And you know what? There's one other place you can find me on the internet, and that's over on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel called The Propsmith. So you can just search for The Propsmith. You'll find me. And I talk about movie prop replicas and movie props and stuff. And that's another thing that I've been dormant at for a long time and am starting to get back into.
Very nice.
That's it for us for this week. We will be back at some indeterminate time in the future with our farewell show where we're going to get real sappy. Please do stay tuned for that. And if you feel like it's taking too long, definitely yell at us on social media. We're at Stargirl Pod pretty much everywhere. And, light a fire under our asses. Sometimes we need that.
Love getting yelled at.
Also, I'm going to be adding some more merch. Instead of recording this podcast, I'm going to make more merch. It's going to be really cool. Keep checking our merch shop at stargirlaftershow.com/shop.
Oh, yay. I'm excited to see what you got.
I'm excited to finally make it. Life's been very busy lately. So until we come back for our farewell show, I just want to say have a super great day.
Stargirl After Show is a production of Fandom Lim Media.